Hi everyone, Scott with Dearly Departed Tours here. When we closed up our museum in February, I put most things in storage, but kept back a few items to show you on YouTube. If you visited the restroom at our old museum, you probably noticed a frame on the wall. For years we've had all these matchbooks on display. They've been donated to us. For years we had these matchbooks on display. They've been donated by friends, Terry, Michael. Loads of people have dropped these off for us and we love them. And this is my way of being able to share that with you. So this is my second matchbook video. I hope you enjoy it. If you can, do me a favor please and hit the subscribe button below, because that is a big deal. YouTube does count that, and this is my career now. If you want to be notified of my new videos, you can click the little bell button and they'll send you an email too. So please do that. Please sit through an ad if you can, and thank you very much for your time and for your attention. This hole in the ground will be the Earl Carroll condominiums. This is the future of Hollywood, another high-rise. But the reason we're right here is because we're doing another matchbook video. Made in Hollywood for Scott. These are my matches. I got these in the 90s when I first moved to Hollywood. But the reason we're in this spot right now is because of the Hollywood Palladium. And the Hollywood Palladium, which clearly says on the back of it, host to 5 U.S. presidents, including John F. Kennedy. Now, it is across the street there. And the Hollywood, I mean, it's got an 11,000 square foot dance floor, holds up to 4,000 people. JFK was honored by, with a dinner here in 1961. Back in 1984, there was a riot here when Black Flag and the Ramones played. It closed down, and in 2007 it was opened again, renovated by Live Nation. If you look behind it, there's not a whole lot going on right now, but soon enough they're going to break ground on 730 new condos and 24,000 square feet of retail space. This is also the home of the Lawrence Welk Show for many years. But as you can see from this matchbook, dancing nightly, America's finest bands with tempting cocktails and delicious dinners. The Hollywood Palladium. Across the street from the world-famous Cinerama Dome. Now the reason I'm here is because of a restaurant called the Hoffbrau Gardens. And little is known about this place. It was mid-30s, that's all I know, and it looks like it was cool, but that's all I know. And the address was 6361 Sunset Boulevard, and this building is 6363 Sunset Boulevard. So this stands where the Hoffbrau Gardens once stood. Gourmet's paradise. Great. These two matchbooks come from the famous Cat and Fiddle restaurant. The Cat and Fiddle, the address 6530 Sunset Boulevard, stood just over there. That was a cool restaurant. In 1982, it opened in Laurel Canyon below the Canyon Country Store by Kim Gardner, who was a member of the Byrds, not the LA Byrds, but the British Byrds. And they were a psychedelic rock band, and that was actually Ronnie Wood's first band. Eventually, that location at the Canyon Country Store closed down, and it stood there on Sunset for 32 years, 32 lovely years. There was not a nicer patio than the Cat and Fiddle. It was gorgeous with a little, with a fountain, and they used to do Sunday lunches, very British tradition, and you can see the patio is all closed off now. So it closed actually in 2014. It sat here for a couple of years empty. The landlords were jacking up the rent on it, and the Cat and Fiddle people couldn't deal with it, and they just said the hell with it and left. And it literally sat here for 2 years. It opened again by one of those really popular chefs, and it tanked pretty quickly. So it looks like it's open, or it looks like it's closed down now, and the Cat and Fiddle reopened over on Highland. And I bet they miss this place, because I sure do. And interestingly enough, This is Marvin Gaye's old studio right across the street. The LA Motown offices were very close to here, but this was Marvin Gaye's studio. Marvin Gaye, the old dearly departed tourist we could see by the pizza slice, was there for 5 years. Valentino's old building, and the old Cat and Fiddle. Now we're on the Hollywood Walk of Fame at William Frawley's star, which actually I didn't even know was here, because he's going to be someone we're going to be talking about in a moment. But the reason we're here is because of that place over there, called Showgirls. In the 60s, that was the haunted house discotheque. There's great footage on YouTube of Sonny and Cher dancing in there. It was literally a haunted house. And they had the Go-Go Girls dancing with a stage that looked like a monster's mouth. It was fabulous. But originally it was Sardi's. As famous as Hollywood itself. And that's where it stood. Sardi's was opened in 1932. It was actually featured in the 1936 film called Hollywood Boulevard, starring John Halliday and Marsha Hunt, which is an amazing movie if you love old Hollywood, to see them walking down Hollywood Boulevard and the old streetcars. It's fantastic. And actually in 1936 it burned. They say that there was a grease fire, and they said that 10,000 people crowded in front of it to watch this thing burn. But it made it, and it's Showgirls now. And they don't serve booze, so you know what that means? That means you get the whole shebang. And that is the Vine Street Theater, where William Frawley saw his last movie, Inside Daisy Clover, collapsed on that corner over there, and we're going to talk about him next. That is a clear nod to the Rocky Horror Picture Show and my friend Lorelei, who I interviewed, who was the lips for the poster. But the reason we're here is because of the Hollywood Knickerbocker Hotel. 1714 Ivar Avenue, Hollywood, California. And there it is. This is the Hollywood Knickerbocker Hotel, opened in 1923. And this is where in 1948 the director D.W. Griffith died of a heart attack in the lobby. This is where Irene, the famous costume designer, jumped from her 11th floor window. That would be in 1962. Now, according to the BS book, Hollywood Babylon, she actually landed on the front awning and writhed there, dying for several days. It's not true. Actually, somebody in the hotel heard her hit the roof, and she died instantly over a love affair with Gary Cooper, supposedly. And this is also where William Frawley died. He actually collapsed on Hollywood Boulevard, and they brought him here to the lobby of the Knickerbocker Hotel, which actually opened up as a very, very posh hotel. And he was pronounced dead in the lobby. He lived here for many years. He moved out, he was living in a different building, but this is where he died. Some things are just meant to be. And Larry Fine of the Three Stooges lived here for several decades, actually, before moving to the motion picture country home in Woodland Hills. And these are the matches for the Hollywood Knickerbocker Hotel. Now, across from the Knickerbocker Hotel and down a little ways, you will see some not so nice things. And the Alto Nido apartment is up there. And that's where we're going to go next. Oh, you know what? Kind of cool. This intersection up here in the movie, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. They actually filmed on this corner. And there was a great scene. See, Tarantino, as anyone who's listened to me for 5 minutes talk, very lovingly put Hollywood Hollywood back to 1969, a lot of it. Some places were just not possible to put back, so he improvised. And one of the places he improvised was Pandora's Box. Pandora's Box was a nightclub on Crescent Heights and Sunset Boulevard, which is long gone. But he rebuilt Pandora's Box right here. The cool colors, everything. And in the movie, it shows Brad Pitt actually going here, stopped at this light. And at this light, he looks to the left in front of Pandora's Box and he sees Andy McDowell's daughter sitting on a bus stop there. And they wave to each other and she does sort of a hitchhiking symbol and he shakes his head no. And the light turns green and he makes this left-hand turn. So now we go up to that orange building at the top of the road. The next matchbook is for the greatest movie ever made, Sunset Boulevard. A most unusual motion picture. William Holden, Gloria Swanson, Eric von Stroheim, Nancy Olson, Jack Webb, Cecil B. DeMille, Hedda Hopper, Buster Keaton, Anna Q. Nilsson. It's amazing. They have all the credits on this matchbook. So William Holden plays Joe Gillis in the movie, and he is a writer. And at the beginning of the movie, they show him actually writing here at the Alto Nido apartments. In the movie, he says, Gloria Swanson says, "Where do you live?" He says, "Hollywood, Alto Nido apartments." And this is it. And actually, in the movie, he does say Ivar and Franklin, and this is Ivar, and it turns into Franklin there. But you do see that sign, the Alto Nido sign. Then the camera pans up to that window with curtains blowing, and they show Gillis typing away just inside. They actually used this building as well in that stupid Black Dahlia movie they made about 10 years ago. The Towne Club was a nightclub. Dancing parties every Friday and Saturday stood at 1743 North Cahuenga Boulevard. And 1743 North Cahuenga Boulevard is this one here. There's little about this place that is known. A newspaper ad that I found said this had the capacity of 500 people. Just bring yourself. Live music and 2 bars. Another thing that used to be around here, there's the Knickerbocker again, and Capitol Records, but the Tock restaurant used to be there. Between that brown building, wherever that car's pulling out right now, that's where the Tock was. The Tock tea room, not that kind of tea room, gentlemen, but time ticks on since 1931. Luncheon 11 to 2, dinner 4:30 to 8, Sunday dinner 12 to 8, closed on Mondays. So there was one in Toluca Lake, there was one here at 1716 Cahuenga Boulevard, and it stood over there on the left. And it was famous because they specialized in comfort food, but its gimmick was that there are a ton of old antique clocks ticking away on the walls. Thus the Tock thing, do you see? So that's where it stood. Another thing it used to be in Hollywood, the Tock tea room. This matchbook isn't vintage, but it's from a vintage restaurant called Musso Frank. A lot of people call it Musso and Frank Grill, and that's what it says. But Mr. Gilmore, John Gilmore, told me, no, it's Musso Frank. That's what you got to call it. And opened in 1919, and there is the back of it. Now, if you remember in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, that's where Leonardo DiCaprio and Brad Pitt met Al Pacino and came out, and he got in his car, valet parking, dropped it off just here. Well, one of the few things that's still left from Once Upon a Time in Hollywood is this painting of Mae West, W.C. Fields, and Charlie Chaplin. They left that behind, which is pretty darn cool. Musso Frank. Boarded up since 2020. They actually opened for about 5 minutes and then had to be shut down again because of COVID. Well, we're going down to the Christie Hotel, which is that brick structure up there on the left. The Christie Hotel. Yes, yes. So we're here for the Christie Hotel, and the Christie Hotel still exists. Now it's the Scientology Hotel. There, you can see. And there it is. Back in the day, a man by the name of Don Beach opened a restaurant called Don the Beachcomber. And Don Beach is actually responsible for really the tiki bar existing. He started it where gold rum is immortalized and drinking is an art. And Don the Beachcomber actually stood just about where that group of 6 cars are clustered over there. And that is where the drink, the zombie, was invented. It actually expanded as a chain. There were about a dozen of them, but back in 1988, this one, the flagship Don the Beachcomber, shut down. When it was closed in 1988, it was finally torn down, and these things built. God, when I started Dearly Departed tours, none of these things were there. It's crazy. And but the sign for Don the Beachcomber parking, isn't that lovely? Was actually there for many, many years in that parking lot, and I took pictures of it. I haven't been able to locate them since, but it was kind of cool to see a little throwback. A stupid sign, but it was cool, and it was a sign that something existed. Now, the Villa Capri restaurant, which was owned by a man named Patsy D'Amour, originally opened on this corner, and it was known as the Little Villa Capri restaurant, because eventually, in 1957, it moved to this location. And here's a photograph of it, or an illustration of it. Patsy D'Amour is responsible for bringing the pizza to Los Angeles. His daughter Philomena still operates Patsy's Pizza out of the farmer's market. And this is where the Villa Capri stood until it was finally destroyed. Well, actually, they moved out. It became a radio station for many years. But when it was still there, it's where James Dean was a regular there. So was Sammy. So was Frank. In fact, Patsy was good friends with Frank Sinatra. And Frank Sinatra was actually a godfather of one of Patsy's sons. And Philomena has been working on a documentary about the Villa Capri for a long time. But if you hunger for Patsy's Pizza, which I highly recommend, it is still open at the farmer's market. but this place closed and was torn down in 2014. One thing that's kind of cool to note was that there's proof that the Villa Capri used to be located here, because there is still a sign for an apartment building that's next to it called the Villa Capri Apartments. So here we are going, wait, something used to exist. 2 doors down from where the Villa Capri restaurant used to be are the Villa Capri Apartments. So this is proof that the Villa Capri existed. There. Tiny Naylor's was one of the coolest Googie style 50s, 60s kitschy kind of cool drive-in restaurant that stood on the corner over there on the left. For the longest time it was an El Pollo Loco, where Brad Pitt's first job was dressed like a chicken on Hollywood Boulevard, or on Sunset. But it was actually opened in 1949 by a guy named W.W. Tiny Naylor. His nickname was Tiny. He was actually 6'4" and weighed 300 pounds. It was such a cool restaurant. Humphrey Bogart said it looked like a huge bird about to take off. And in '83 was really the last time it was ever used in anything significant. It was in a movie called Blue Thunder. In 1989, they tried to get historic status because it was such an unusual piece of architecture, but they failed, and in its place is that. And just over there, on the other side of those tents, is where the old Chaplin Studios is now Jim Henson. And I'm leaving. Now we're in front of Jones Restaurant and Bar. Been here since I think the 90s when it opened. I remember that this is where Eddie Murphy was the night that he picked up Shalimar and was arrested. But the reason we're here is because of the Formosa Cafe. So the Formosa is right over there. And it was actually, as you can see from the back of it, an old train car, an old Red Line train car was incorporated into it. And one of the reasons for its success was the fact that it was located right across the street from the United Artists Studios, which was also the home to Aaron Spelling Productions, or United Artists Studios. Now, it was not, really built to last, and it was pretty rickety, actually, falling apart, literally falling apart. Now, there was only parking lot behind it and around it. There was a car wash just over there to the left, and behind it was city-owned property. They used to park city vehicles there. And the city was trying to get it torn down in the 90s, but they won a reprieve to keep the Formosa, but it was still in deterioration. Nobody was really going there. In 1997, the movie LA Confidential with Guy Pearce and he played the cop in LA Confidential, a prostitute, a whore, cut to look like Lana Turner, still a whore. That scene was actually filmed in the Formosa Cafe. Now in 2015, the owners gutted it completely, took away all the original deep red interior and the sort of Asian-inspired decorations, and made it into this silver gross, really trying to appeal to a younger crowd, and it just did not work, and it really backfired on it, and eventually it closed down. Again, its future was questionable, but last year in June, Bobby Green and his business partners reopened it, restored it, and it's one of those few times where they do it and they do it right. I couldn't believe when I went inside it. It looked better than I remember ever seeing it. I mean, there was a dive bar. I used to drink there in the 90s, in the early 90s. That was my drinking hole. And hardly anyone would go there. You saw smoke, and the place was just nicotine dripping off the walls. But they opened it again in last year, 2019, just in time for COVID to shut it down again. But they did it right. And what's cool is that my friend Kimberly gave me these recently. These are the new Formosa matches. And That's the logo that they use where the stars dined since 1939. And look at these cool matches. Even the back. That's when you do it right. The swizzle sticks. Oh man, this place is so cool. The Formosa Cafe. I hope it weathers COVID, because what a cool place it is. And I have a friend that worked there. This is going to go back to me. Back when I moved here in 1994, originally when I moved here, January of 94, somebody told me that someone who was related to J. Sebring worked there. So I just walked up to the bar and I said, does somebody here work, related to J. Sebring? And a woman said, she was standing next to me, she goes, well, he was married to my daughter. Her name was Cass Marple. Her daughter's name was Cammie. And Cammie she married J. Sebring. And Cass was just the loveliest. She worked here for 25 years. She used to work at the Crescendo and the Trocadero, all the old supper clubs. And she had such great stories about Judy Garland and Elvis and John Wayne and everyone going to the Formosa. And yeah, rest in peace, Cass. You were the best. My friend Ben, gave me a great picture of Cass that used to hang on the wall in there. And he made a terrific copy of it for me. So the Formosa, long live the Formosa. I hope it lasts. And that's the end of my matchbook tour today. Thank you for joining me. Until next time, Scott with Dearly Departed. Bye. I want to take a second to thank the supporters of this page, Robert Brenner and Ann Meyer. You guys have been so generous. Thank you. Barry Fagan, Eliza Adams, Rita Rizzo, James Harrington, Meet Benny 102.3, Brendan McKelwey, Gregory Aguirre, Jane Howard, Karen Beer, Steve and Jen Milan, Radioheader, Troy Haas, Melissa Webb, Funkaholic, Julie Cooley, and Sharon McCarty. Thank you very much for your support. It's very much appreciated. And the link to the Patreon page is below, as well as a PayPal link. I appreciate it. I know it's kind of gross, but this is my living now. So thank you for your support. You guys are the very best. And gals and everyone.